Hello, everyone. This is Jake Walker with BMI Imaging. Just wanted to welcome you all out to our webinar today. We'll be discussing scanning costs when you're scanning your microfilm. We're just getting started here. I see there's lots of names rolling in. We have quite a large attendee list, so that's great to hear. Just before we get going, if you wouldn't mind, I think on the little panel that you have the ability to raise your hand, or you click on that little hand thing. If everyone would do that so that I can just make sure that our audio is working, that would be fantastic. We've had some issues early on, but looks like I'm seeing some hands go up. Good. Okay. If you can't find it, I'm not sure quite exactly how it looks for you guys, but I have a little panel on the right hand side. There's also should be a question panel there too. So we'll use that if you have questions as we go through this, or at the end. And if you want to stick around at the end, we can review some of those questions. Or you can always just send me an email afterwards. And if we don't have time, if we go over, then I can address those emails separately because it'll give me a report of who asked questions. So you're not going to be able to chime in and chat. It's just it's too much with the number of attendees that we have. So if you have questions or thoughts, just go ahead and put them in the question thing, and I'll get to them at the end. So let's go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Jake. I've been with BMI for 6, 7 years. I work a lot with libraries and historical societies, archives. BMI's been around since the 50s. Of course, we began just as microfilming, so we created a lot of the microfilm that's used mostly in the West Coast, since that's where we're based out of. So if you've ever run across newspapers and different historical things on microfilm, there's a good chance that BMI had a hand in that. Obviously, now we do more than just creating microfilm. There's not a whole lot of that going on. I know some of you are still getting microfilm for your local newspaper, so we do a little bit of that, but a lot of that's phasing out. Everything's going digital, and so obviously we're heavy into the digital area now. We've evolved with the technology. We're out of the Bay Area in California, so we've got a lot of technical tools at our disposal, a lot of really smart people that have joined our team, and we've created some really neat products that we'll talk about in a little bit. So in addition to doing microfilm creation, we do microfilm scanning. We also do paper scanning, large format scanning, the newspaper, newsprint scanning, your books that you have. We're able to handle those and take them apart nicely and whatnot. We also do legacy data conversion. So if you've ever done any scanning services at all in the past, if you've got data in old systems or old archives, we can actually help extract that and get it into a usable format, or get it all into one place, into one content management system. So we do a lot of different things. We have a couple facilities here in California, and then we have some partner facilities throughout the country that'll help us out if we have a regional specific project where you can't have the material move out of state or something like that. It doesn't happen a lot, but it is at our disposal if we need to. We've got a lot of partners. We have a lot of clients all over the country, all different sizes, large public libraries, small historical societies and museums, really small towns where it's just 20, 30 roles, universities, colleges. We even do a lot of work, or we did a few years ago, with large historical ancestry type record companies, names of which you are very familiar with. So they would send us a lot of the material on microfilm and on paper, and we would scan it for them, and then they would put it into their platforms. So we work with all different sizes. So it doesn't matter whether you're small, big. We've done it all. We continually do it all, and so we're prepared for that. A lot of that is because of our presence at these conferences that we attend. So we go to the ALAs and the PLAs and the Society of American Archivists, your regional conferences, states. We go to a lot of those. We try to get out to as many as we can. We don't make it out to too many state conferences anymore, just because a lot of them seem to overlap. So we have to kind of pick and choose where we go, and we like to stay closer to home if we can. But we are always at the ALA annual conferences. Unfortunately, not this past few weeks ago. We weren't there because it was canceled, but we should be there next year, assuming it happens. We were at PLA in Nashville a few months ago. SA again was canceled. It's in August, but we should be there the next year. So look out for our booth at these things. We typically have a large monitor where we have the demos going on, and and we have giveaways and things like that. So here's what we're going to talk about today. So microfilm scanning price. I know you guys all want to get kind of down to the brass tacks here. This is what we're going to go over. These are the different things that could affect the overall cost of a microfilm scanning project. And I'm going to focus mostly on newspapers. I think that's pretty much everyone here has it. I know some of you may be interested in, census records and other types of historical documents that may be on either paper or microfilm. And it applies a little bit here, but this is going to be centric to newspapers since that's the majority of the projects that we're doing with libraries and historical societies is the newspapers. So a lot of the indexing stuff is going to relate to newspapers. So so here's kind of our list, our program today. There'll be about 9 or 10 slides, and we'll go over each one. Some of them are going to be really quick. Some of them we'll talk in depth because I think they affect the cost of this project more than others. So the first one up is the number of rolls of microfilm. So this is pretty straightforward. Basically, what we need you guys to do, if you're interested in the cost, is count up the number of rolls that you're interested in scanning, and then just share that number with us. Now, we understand that some of the rolls are going to be completely full of images, some of them are going to be partially full of images, some you're not sure. We don't really care. We just need to know that total number. It all kind of averages out in the end, but this is what we've kind of settled on as far as how to price these things out. You look here, you see 30, 40 plus rolls. We have no idea. Nobody knows how many pages are on each roll of microfilm. So if you were to say, well, we have, what's the cost per page, which is what a lot of the companies will do. It's not really easy to quantify, and you could end up with a very large bill at the end of the project if that number is way off. But if you tell us you have 60 rolls, we're going to give you the exact cost. That's not going to change. So that's how we price these things out. I mean, we can do a per page cost, but it's just not practical. This is a lot easier in our minds. So that's all we need to know. So I'm sure if you've looked into it before, you've been asked, how many pages. We don't really care about that. We just want to know how many rolls you have. So that's the first step. Figure out how many rolls you have, jot that down, and you can share it with me, and I can give you the exact cost based on some of the other things we're going to talk about, or just kind of keep that in the back of your mind as we go through this. The next factor is type of film. This is not going to be huge, but it is something to understand. Your newspaper microfilm, 99% of the time is going to be on 35 millimeter microfilm, so they're larger images, larger film, and there's going to be less images on a standard 100-foot 35 millimeter roll. I think they fit close to maybe 500-600 frames. We don't usually see them that full, but that's technically how full they can be. And as you can see here on the image, a frame is typically 2 pages. Most newspaper microfilm is filmed 2 up, and so that's how you get the 2 pages per frame. 16 millimeter microfilm, you're going to see more with your census records, other historical documents that you may have on microfilm. That's going to be typically 16 millimeter, which is going to have a lot more images. There's 2,500 frames typically, so you could have 2,500 images, whereas a newspaper microfilm, 800 images, maybe 1,000 is probably a good amount, but I would say the average is around 600 to 700 pages of newsprint per roll of microfilm on 35 millimeter. So I guess that's something you'd want to share with us. Oh, they're all 35 millimeter, great. Okay, we know what we're talking about. Some are 16 millimeter. That means that they're probably something else, so they would be priced differently. And in fact, they probably are going to be less because the indexing is going to be different than the newspapers. The next one is resolution. This is going to be this will contribute to the cost. The standard is 300, depending on what you read, I guess. I think NDMP still agrees with that. They may change, and sorry for those of you who don't know what NDMP is. It's the National Digital Newspaper Project. It's what the whole country uses as kind of the standard for scanning newspapers, and in fact they have their own standard, which we'll talk about. But most of the guidelines that we follow are going to align with that. So when you say, well, what do you scan at? Well, we scan at 300 DPI. We can do 400 DPI and even higher. It's just, in our opinion, as you can see on these images, it's not entirely worth it. I don't think it's worth the extra cost. It's 400 DPI, it's larger files. It takes us longer to scan. So typically, the cost is going to be about 20 to 30% higher. and I don't think that the benefit justifies that cost. But we'll leave that up to you. We'll even do samples if you would like us to. Here, scan this roll at 300 and scan this at 400, and we want to compare ourselves. Some of those big companies that I mentioned earlier, they really, really, really rely on OCR, so they're gonna spend the extra money to possibly get better text search, which, in my opinion, may be improved a little bit, but might not have justified the cost. So we'll do some 400 DPI for them, but most of the libraries we work with are and historical societies and whatnot, it's just the 300 standard DPI. So here's the big one. Once you know the total number of rolls, this is going to be the big cost differentiator. You have multiple ways to index, and by index, that's basically us keying or typing in, naming the files, however you want to call it. Basically, it's once we scan it, how are we going to find that? What's it going to be called? So roll level is where we just create a folder for the roll. So you have a roll, and typically the rolls will tell you what's on it. You take the little carton and you look at it, and it says this is the Union, October 1967, January through June. So it's got 6 months on there. So we could create just a folder that says that on there, and then all the files are in that folder. That's the least expensive way to do this, other than just not indexing at all. But really, there's not a lot of cost associated with this method. But as you can probably envision, it's going to be tough to find something. So if you're looking for something in March, you're going to have to thumb through all the files because they're not going to be named. You're not going to have any naming at all. You're just going to know that it's going to be somewhere in the middle because this is from January to June. I don't really have, maybe we've done 1 or 2 projects like that, but not many of our clients have settled on that because they're wanting some more granularity as far as how they're going to find things. But that is an option if you're really looking at just keeping the low cost, or maybe you have some staff there or volunteers that could go through and index them. That's an option, but that's the lowest way to do it. The next is the issue date. So we look at each page and we say, okay, this is the January 1st, 1967 issue. Next page is still 1967, January 1st, and so on. So we'll create a file or a bookmark, if you want to call it that, for each issue date. So if there's an issue date, if it's 1 issue per week, so you're going to get 1 file per issue. It's per week, and then some that are daily, you'll get 1 per day. That's another way to do it. That's the more popular way. In fact, it's probably the most popular way. The next level is page level. So in addition to telling you what the publication is, the Union, January 1st, 1967, we also will say, well, this is page 1. The next is page 2, page 3. Or with the bigger papers, it's A1, A2, B1, B2. So that can get a lot more granularity. We've done this for a few projects. It's not as popular. Issue date is by far the most popular option. It's pretty much the standard option. Page level is just taken it to the next level. It can get a little bit confusing with the Bs and the classifieds and the different things like that, but that is an option that's there and available. And then the next is article level. So this is where you're actually looking at each article and you are essentially identifying what that article is about. Sometimes it's just based on text search, and so it's not entirely accurate. Other times it can involve correction of that text search so that just that headline is accurately described, and then each article can become a file. We don't do this really at all. This is getting into the NDMP stuff. In fact, out here in California, that's typically the standard. They go to article level segmentation, which is about as far as you can take it. It's really, really, really expensive, and we'll look at that in just a little bit. But in theory, that's an option, and that all flows into the NDMP. The standard is page level for NDMP. The national standard, the international standard, I believe, is article level, which is what California has adopted for whatever reason. And I think maybe a few other states do it, but I'm not sure. But that's kind of how that all works. So the next factor is subcontractors. This really holds a negative connotation for a lot of the projects we work on, especially if there's very sensitive information. We work with all kinds of different clients, law enforcement, things like that. You can't really send images to an offshore subcontractor who can index them at a very, very low cost if it has sensitive data on it. But because these are newspapers, you can do that. That's not really a risk here, but just understand that BMI, to keep the cost low for both of us, we will typically use a subcontractor that is trained to do this. We do lots and lots and lots and lots of this stuff. So this is all they see. So they're really good at it. They'll identify the publication, the dates or issue, volume, whatever, and page, all that stuff, and they do it at a much lower cost. So in addition to that indexing that they can do that keeps cost down for everyone, they also help frame the images. So we'll do the programmatic framing process, and then they'll go through and QA and verify it, and we do some of that too. But just to make sure that we got every single frame there, so nothing is missing and it's accurately, bordered as you see on the little green boxes down below. The next is scheduling. So it just kind of depends on where we're at. Sometimes we're really busy, sometimes we're really slow. So when we're really, really busy and you say, we need this done by the end of June because our fiscal year ends in June or ends at beginning of July, that could be a cost factor because essentially what you would be asking us to do is to stop working on some other things to get this done. And if that's the case, that may require, an expedited fee or something like that. Doesn't come into play too much with libraries and archives, but it's something to be aware of. If you were to come to us and say, hey, we need this done within a month or 2 months, there could possibly be an added cost for that. Obviously, you're going to know that ahead of time, and so you don't have to worry, about surprise costs or anything like that. Also, something to mention that I didn't mention on subcontractors is we're going to tell you exactly what we're going to do and what we're going to use subcontractors for, and we're going to get your agreement to that prior. So whether it's not a big deal or not, it doesn't matter. We're still going to make sure that you understand we're using subcontractors and that you agree to it. A lot of you that work through counties and cities, they actually require that in their contracts. So just be aware of that we're not going to use it without your knowledge. We're going to get your written approval to do that kind of stuff. Capacity. So this is a big issue right now. What kind of capacity do you have? A few months ago, March, April, we had very, very little, if any, capacity. We could only work on what was deemed by our state as essential work. Unfortunately, libraries and archives, their newspapers didn't make the cut. That wasn't deemed essential. So we had to put a lot of those projects off. So because of that, we weren't able to take on new projects until, a few months ago when they kind of started opening things back up. Hopefully we don't revert back to that, but that's something that could happen. It could be something else, or we could just be booked to the brim and say, hey, look, the only way we can do this project is if we bump it up because we got to push some other things off. So it's a little bit related to scheduling, but capacity could possibly affect the cost. I haven't seen it happen yet, other than just saying we're going to have to push this off a month or two because of the COVID situation. But now that we've got that behind us, I hope we're fine now. So whether you have something ready to go, today or next week, it shouldn't be an issue. OCR, so optical character recognition. This is it's not a very high cost, but it is something that would affect the cost, so it makes it a little bit more expensive. But it's usually included because it's a part of the service. We understand that this is a very important part of doing newspaper scanning and any historical record scanning. The ability to be able to search the text is really neat, and we've got some really cool tools that will improve that. So we've taken some technology that's out there for OCR text search capture, and we've formatted it to newspapers, and we've made it so that it works better than what's readily available to just anybody because of our technology background and expertise. So OCR is going to be really, really heavily relied on when you do this stuff. You're going to want to search names and things like that aren't indexed. And so OCR, you're definitely going to want it. If you don't want it, it makes it a little bit less expensive, but in my opinion, the cost versus benefit is way more in favor in the benefits than the cost, as opposed to the 300, 400 DPI thing, where I don't think it's worth it. OCR, I think, is for sure worth it. So output, this is what you're going to get back. What do you want back? That could be a major factor in the cost. So BMI, we have what we call the library standard. It's more or less internal talk, when I come to my team and say, hey, we've got a new project coming in from, Los Angeles County Library or Los Angeles County Public Library System, it's, 100 roles, library standard. We all understand that here to be what you receive back is a hard drive, or it can be sent through file transfer protocol. Most of the times it's hard drive just because you're going to want to keep them on a hard drive. It's a PDF per issue, and it usually includes OCR. So now you have that. You have the files. You have them on a hard drive. They're not very usable because it's kind of tough to move around from file to file, and they're not in a database or in a content management system, so you're not able to search everything, but you have them. You have the files. You have a backup. And then we also include our digital reel application. And for those of you who have talked with me before, I see some familiar names on there. You know exactly what that means. Those of you who are new to BMI and haven't been around the website and whatnot, this is our own application that we created for newspapers. It's a really, really neat tool, and we have webinars available on our website of past demos where all we talk about is digital reel. So I highly recommend going over to our website and just taking a quick look. There's webinars you can check out. There's also clients that you can check out. Like, for example, I'm over here on the internet. I go to Napa County Library, and we have libraries all across the country who have their stuff online because it's public data. So you can come on to Napa and go to the newspapers and magazines, and let's come over here to Napa County Newspaper Archive. And then from here, you're actually in, once you've clicked on that, you're in our digital reel application. It still uses the Napa colors and logos and things like that, but this is actually our website that we created for Napa. So each library that we work with, we create a little website like this where it has their data. So you can play around with the digital reel application right from here. And I highly recommend that you do that. If you need more resources, if you like a resource closer to home, I can pretty much come up with somebody in every area that we've worked with that has their stuff online that you can check out and see what it looks like. So that's something to take a look at. Digital reel. You can, in addition to having page level indexing, you have an exact replication of the microfilm. You can enhance the images. You can adjust the brightness and contrast of each image, which is going to be really important for the really old stuff that has dark and light areas. This is the only way to make sure that all images are legible. Using digital reel is going to be a really helpful tool to make things legible. Everything is searchable. All those words on every page is put into a database, assuming it's picked up by the engines, and you can search all those different words. You can search just the page, issues, dates, months, years, lots of different searching capabilities. It's going to be a really helpful tool to find things. So it's essentially a content management system, but it's all online based. It's all hosted. You don't have to do anything. You just send us the roles. We'll scan them. We'll put them up on this. We'll give you a link to it. You put that link on your website. Patrons then click on that link and they're in. If the stuff is copyrighted, there's another method to do that so that they're only available at the library. So they'll come to the library. They'll go through that same process. They'll click on the link on your website and they'll get access. If it's copyright protected, they won't get access outside the library. So that's kind of how we get use the copyright thing. Excuse me. So, but there is an annual fee with that. That's kind of the catch there. We have to host and store and manage all that data for you, so there is an annual fee with that. The next option is basic. This is that role level indexing. Very, very, very minimal indexing. So all you're getting back is just a folder with all the files from each role in it. They're not indexed at all. There's not any OCR. Really, really low cost way of doing that. No other fees, but you're getting a hard drive back and you're not going to be able to do much with it. But if you have resources to index and everything, you can do that. That's an option. Basic Plus, that's essentially what you get with Basic, only that you're going to get page level indexing, similar to digital reel, and you're going to get OCR, similar to digital reel, only you're not going to have the ability to search all the different issues at once because it's not in a content management system. You're not going to be able to adjust the images. They're just stagnant, images that you typically have. So that's Basic Plus. And then there's the NDMP Standard. So that's where you get the 3 different file formats. You get the archival TIFF, which is just a big old dense grayscale file. You get the PDFs with text search. You get the JPEG 2000s, Met Alto. If you've done any research on this at all, you've probably seen that. It's very complicated, convoluted methodology for indexing and XML reports. There's a lot going on with that. But that's the NDMP standard. 99.9% of NDMP projects are funded through state and federal grants. So if you ever apply to grants, that's kind of how it is. And that money is very limited. I think they release like 100 or 200,000 every year to certain states, and that only takes care of 100 roles or something like that. So they've handpicked 10 roles from you, 10 roles from them, and they only do small portions because it is so expensive to do, which we'll see right here on this slide. So here's something I just added. It's the cost examples. I know you're all interested in cost. You all want to know what your project costs, and you don't know exactly what your project's going to cost until you share with us the number of roles you have and what option you want to go with. But here are some just basic overviews of what the cost can be. And this is all based on everything that we went over today being the normal standard thing. It's not a crazy time. It's not during, COVID when we're locked down. It's not, we need this done in a month. It's all just the basic, here's our project. BMI will get it done within, 4 to 6 weeks or something like that, which is our standard process. So we're going to look at 100 roles and 500 roles. So for the BMI library standard, 100 roles is going to cost you around $8,500. And for 500 roles, it's going to cost you around $27,500. So that first initial project that you pay, so let's say 100 rolls, it's $8,500, that actually takes care of the first year of hosting. So you're going to get a year of hosting and a hard drive, so you have all the files, because we don't own the files, we don't manage and control it. You have it, you control it. We're just kind of providing. I compare it to like a parking garage. So we built this great parking structure. You have a car, you want to park it in your garage, that's great, that's fine. You just pay a service fee every month or year to park in our garage, but we don't own your vehicle. We're not going to lend your vehicle out to anyone else, and you can pull your car out at any time. So that's kind of how that works. So once the first year's up and you've had a chance to play around with the application and see if you like it, you'll get an invoice for the next year. And if you like it and you pay it, then you can keep using it. If you don't like it, you want us to turn it off, you just tell us, and you don't have to worry about it. But the minimum annual cost is $1,200. That just kind of takes care of all the licensing and just the minimal storage that we have to do. So whether you have 50 rolls, 100 rolls, 200 rolls, you're looking at roughly $1,200 a month or a year. Sorry, $1,200 a year, $100 a month for us to take care of all that. 500 rolls, you're looking at closer to $1,500. And then this is all based on the standard licensing agreements. You can add more licenses if you need to. 5, 10 licenses is usually all we need. Some of the bigger customers that we have that have online stuff that people accessing it from all over, they may require more licenses, but that's very rare. The basic, this is the very, very minimum work. We're just indexing the role label. We're not indexing any of the images, so you have no idea what's on each image until you open them. That real basic service, 100 rolls, is going to run you about $4,000, and then 500 rolls is $12,500. So we give it back to you, and then you could work on the indexing yourself, however you want to do it, or you can just have it so that the digital, so you don't have to worry about it. It just came to my mind, and it's very unfortunate, but we have a client that we've been talking with for years, and they finally decided to do the project, and so we got them that last quote, and literally less than a month later, there was a fire at the library, and they lost all but maybe 100 rolls of microfilm. So they lost a lot of that, and they can't find it anywhere else. So basic may be a good thing to do if you don't have all the money, but you at least need to get something done so that it's digital, so that you don't lose it or it's not damaged. Heaven forbid, some type of natural disaster or something like that. I mean, you think it never can happen, but apparently it happens. It's a very terrible, terrible thing that happened, but it can happen. Basic Plus is essentially it's essentially the BMI library standard without digital reel. So you'll notice it's the same exact cost. Whether we give you digital reel access or not, that first year, it's going to be the same cost. So I always recommend take the first year, you get it for free, try it out, see if you like it. And if you do, great, you pay the invoice for the next year and you keep going. If you don't like it, you don't have an invoice, just tell us and we'll turn it off. But you have the hard drive, you have all the images indexed, all the OCR. You can put it into a different content management system. We don't do a lot of basic pluses because everyone says, yeah, we'll take the first year, see if we like it, and most stick with it because it's a great product. And then lastly is NDMP. As you can see, it is very, very expensive. The amount of indexing and metadata and different things you have to move around it's very, very costly. So we're kind of basing it on 55 cents a page. That fluctuates. It may be closer to 42 or 43. Either way, it's crazy expensive, as you can see. So that's why most, if not all, those projects that are done through NDMP are done through a grant of some sort. And not very much is ever done. There's no way you're going to do 500 roles, or 600 roles, or thousands of roles, which some of our clients have. So yeah, but also keep in mind what we do is it's not a basically you can do a BMI project and have a lot of that stuff done through NDMP still. You don't have to replicate that work. You can take the files that we create and you can run those through NDMP at a later date and get all the metadata. So scanning first and foremost is the most important thing, and we make it inexpensive. We also provide you with a great platform to view it, to share it, to search it, and then at any point in time, you can take those same files and make it an NDMP project when you have the additional funds or there's a grant or something like that. So you're not replicating any efforts. So, don't be discouraged if you have to do NDMP and there's just no way you have that kind of money. You can at least get it scanned and accessible, and then later do the extra work to do the Mets Alto and the XMLs and different things that NDMP requires. So here's my contact information. You can reach me at any time. Email's probably best right now with the changing environment we're in. Like I mentioned, hopefully I mentioned it, we're out of California. Things are changing just yesterday. We're kind of going backwards a little bit as far as opening and closing businesses. So hopefully we don't get back into that, but it's a possibility that my hours could be limited in the office, so maybe phoning is not the best option, but email is. But if you're just interested, you're kicking tires, and you just want to know what the cost is, or you're preparing for budgets, we don't mind that at all. It's very easy for me to share with you the cost. So just shoot me an email and say, hey, we have this number of roles. What's the cost going to be? And I'm happy to share that with you. There's no strings attached. It's in fact a lot of times I'll just shoot you back an email, and then if you need a proposal, I can put together a proposal. But yeah. So I don't see, there may be a few questions here. No, I don't really see any questions. So you guys are obviously just here to learn. That's great. I hope I prepared you a little bit more for the costs. Hopefully provided some insight. Again, if you have any concerns, thoughts, questions, just shoot me an email or give me a call, and I'll be happy to share that with you. If you were just shy and didn't want to type out your questions, that's fine as well. You can always send those to me later. You should be getting an email back from all this. Thanks for attending all that, and then a link also if you want to share that with your colleagues to share the demo with them, to share the webinar with them. But there'll also be some information there on our website to get more information about what we talked about and to contact me. So I appreciate everyone for sticking with me this webinar. We'll have probably a couple more throughout the year on different topics, maybe on copyright. I know that's a big one. We'll see. So look out for those emails, and we look forward to hearing from everyone. Thanks.